God reassures Abram, like, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm here. There's like this little check-in that God does with Abram. I'm right here. And it's not enough. It's still not enough. Abram comes back at him like, what are you going to give me? I have no heir. The heir to this is going to be somebody who's not of my own flesh and blood. How in the world could this possibly happen? He is losing faith. And so God takes it one step further. And I just think this story, this part of it anyway, is so beautiful. And one little caveat. This is a really beautiful part of the story. And we know ultimately Abraham, to be one of the great heroes of the faith, right? And he is. Let's just say that and name that. But also, if you read through his story, he also does a lot of really bad stuff. He's not so great, which if you look at most of our biblical heroes, that tends to be the case. There's a whole lot of other stuff they do where you're like, really? You thought that was a good idea? I won't go there right just yet. But in this case, Abram is in a place where I think it's very human, right? Things are just not going the way they're supposed to be going. They're not going the way that you said they would go, God. And here I am, stuck. You've promised me that I would have these heirs, that I would be the father to a great nation, and none of this is working out. And your mere words aren't really that helpful anymore, right? Which is kind of astounding when you think about it. The Lord spoke to Abram, and he's like, I feel like that sometimes, though. This kind of word or promise will come back to me, and I'm like, really? So God takes it a step further, and we get this beautiful moment. God says, Abram, I want you to go and look up toward the heavens. Look to the stars. Count them if you can. So shall your descendants be. It's pretty astounding when you think about it. God's kind of doing two things there, I think. One, these stars are becoming a visual representation of just how numerous his descendants will be, right? They're like an actual visual representation. Count them if you can, so shall your descendants be. But I don't know if that would totally reassure me just in and of itself, because that's just sort of God saying again, just trust me, trust me, trust me. But what I think is also happening is God knows that when you step outside and you look at those star shows that we just talked about a few minutes ago over here that we get every now and then, it's kind of hard to look up into those and be anxious, isn't it? I don't know about you, but even in some of the most stressful, hard times in my life, and this is the thing with us in where we live, we got to go somewhere. You're not going to see much of the stars here. But when you've been up in the Boundary Waters or at that cabin, or as you heard me talking about in my story on the first Sunday in the Mexican desert of the Baja Peninsula, it is astounding. And I don't know about you, but it's hard to look up there and feel anxious about your life or the world in that moment. And I think God knows that. And so God brings Abram out. Look to the stars, Abram. Look to the stars and just be reassured. And God doesn't give Abram reassurance of the heir or anything like that. He just says pretty much, look to the stars. I mean, he does say, so shall your descendants be, but that's about it. There's no plan. There's no timeline. There's no here's how this is going to work biologically because Sarai's a little old to bear children, but she eventually will. There's no details. There's nothing other than just look at those stars. And I think what happens is Abram gets reassured that there is something more. There is something bigger in this world for us to connect to. There is that smallness that Kelly talked about. That for me, that's comforting. I don't know why. You would think feeling small wouldn't be comforting, but it's comforting. And I think it's comforting because we feel so small, and it's sort of like because of our smallness, now we are being held like a child who needs comfort from her mother. When this child is distraught, upset, crying, and can't even articulate why, but mom comes and holds her. That's how I feel when I look to the stars. doesn't solve the problems, doesn't fix anything. But looking to the stars makes me feel held in that smallness. And I think that's what's happening with Abram here. He's getting a sense of being held, of the fact that it's going to be okay. Perhaps even if it doesn't come to fruition, Abram, that doesn't mean that you are a failure. There's so much more, Abram, so much more. Well, as we move through the story, we'll learn that Abram and Sarai do have a child together. There's a whole lot of other weird stuff that happens, but they eventually do have a child. His name will be Isaac. And so shortly after all of that happens, we get to the point of Abram's death. And now think about this. Abram, so shall your descendants be. And Abram dies before he even sees a grandchild. And what we'll see as this story goes on is just the way in which that promise does get fulfilled. But Abram never gets to see it. I wonder if on his deathbed, he went back to those stars. It's okay, Abram. Because in the end, guess what, Abram? It's not about you. It's about all of us. It's about this huge, massive project of God, of the people on earth in this cosmic space. This is not about you. This is about generations on. Last week was a strange week for me. Maybe it was for you. On Tuesday night, anybody watch TV on Tuesday night? Tuesday night, there was a presidential debate. And I can't not watch them, but boy, are they anxiety-inducing. They just make you so stressed. The next day I woke up, and it's the 23rd anniversary of September 11th. And it hit me just in that kind of 12-hour period that I feel like our culture has been in a place, and I started this podcast, and I call it this on the podcast too. I don't know why that you need to know that, but I feel like our culture since September 11th has been living in a kind of collective chronic anxiety. And it's really ramped up the last few years. If I hear one more time, this is the most important election of your lifetime, I think I might just lose it because I think it's the third or fourth time I've heard that. But what I think that gets to is that we are in a space of deep anxiety about the condition of this country and our world. And as somebody who wants to commit their self to generating justice in the world, and that's what this church wants to do. It's in our mission statement that we want to be focused on social justice. You can start to lose hope. You can start to lose hope that anything's going to happen because we just seem to be in this cycle of maybe there's some steps towards justice, and then there's this reaction backwards. It's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, it feels like, and it's just been going on and on and on. And I get to a point where I feel like I'm saying to God, when, oh Lord? When? When will it happen? Paul, why don't you step outside? Look to the stars. There's something so much more. There's something so much bigger that's going on, and it's not about you, and it's not about your time and space. I need you to just keep doing the work. And that might feel like a burden, but when you're doing it as you're looking at the stars, it kind of rests nicely. We just need to keep doing our part and trust that this thing is so much bigger than we can imagine. We have a lot to learn from our indigenous siblings in this world. And one of the sort of concepts in many indigenous cultures is that the things you do today, you do them in honor of 7 generations prior to you, and you do them for 7 generations to come. I think that's the mindset God would have for us. Think about the 7 generations from now. Think about 7 generations back and what has happened between now and then. There's been quite a bit of improvement in our cultures, in our societies. I looked up 7 generations ago from right now, which sometimes 25 years is considered a generation, so that would be 175 years ago. It would be September 19th, I think 17th maybe, 1949. Harriet Tubman liberated herself. That's what was 7 generations ago. We have made improvements. There has been progress. I don't know that Harriet Tubman would have felt like it. But here we are. So, beloved, when we step back into this space that we're going to step into, especially for the next who knows how many months, I was going to say just the next couple of months until November, but as we learned last time, these things can go on longer. There's going to be this chronic collective anxiety that we live in. And if we are to be a people of justice, what we're going to need to do in order to pace ourselves for the work before us to be about bringing justice and equity to this world, we're going to need to find this time and space to go outside and look to the stars and hear that soft whisper of the Spirit. There is so much more, Paul, and I will be with you. It's not going to be easy, but I will be with you. As you're comfortable, I would invite you now to close your eyes. And I want you to think back to a time where maybe you were looking at the stars. Just try to find that place in your memory. I would believe that probably everybody in this room has done that at one point in their life. Maybe not, but picture that star show that the heavens were giving you that time. And let your body relax. Knowing that it doesn't take the work away. It doesn't take the burden away. But maybe as we rest in the arms of our Creator at her breast, maybe it takes a little of the anxiety away. Knowing that there is more, that there is something bigger, and we just need to play our part. Amen. I invite you to